At the top of the stairs, a portrait loomed. A woman in a gown of faded silk, her eyes hollowed sockets, staring into nothing. She was beautiful in a cruel sort of way, like a doll whose face had been carved too thin. Above the fireplace, a gilded mirror hung askew, its glass clouded and twisting whatever little light dared touch it. In the drawing room, a piano sat silent, draped in a sheet like a corpse. Next to it, a book lay open, its pages filled with music notes that seemed to writhe like insects trapped in amber. As Elias moved through this tomb of luxury, he found traces of lives interrupted, a half-written letter on a desk, a woman's reticule lying on a chair as if she had simply vanished into thin air. There were bedrooms filled with dust motes dancing in the weak sunlight, each one a stage in the story that had never been finished. The kitchen held a cold hearth and a table set for a meal that would never be eaten. Above, in the nursery, a rocking horse swayed gently, as if coaxed by an unseen hand. On the wall, a calendar hung frozen in the month of October, the year 1888. But there was no answer, only the sound of his own breathing and the house settling around him. Outside, the wind began to rise, rattling the loose panes of glass. The branches of the encroaching ivy scraped against the windowsills like fingernails. As darkness fell, the house seemed to sigh, a long, low sound that reverberated through the empty halls. Elias found himself running his fingers along a velvet curtain, willing the shadows to take shape, wanting to see if the legends were true. But all he found was dust and silence. Then he heard it again, a sigh, a sob, a voice whispering his name. He whirled around, his heart hammering against his ribs. But there was nothing there, just the shadows deepening, the darkness thickening. Fear pricked at him, cold and sharp, urging him to flee. But curiosity, that insatiable beast, kept him rooted to the spot. He began to explore again, venturing deeper into the labyrinth of the mansion. Up in the attic, shrouded in cobwebs and lit only by slivers of moonlight, he discovered trunks filled with clothing, yellowed lace and leather, a wedding dress hanging limp like a shroud. And then he saw it, a diary with a leather cover, its pages filled with spidery handwriting. The diary belonged to the woman in the portrait, Catherine Earnshaw. Her words spilled secrets onto the brittle pages, tales of a life lived within these four walls, of a love both fierce and doomed. As Elias read, he felt the presence of the house close around him, not menacing, but mournful, as though the very stones were weeping. He learned of Catherine's love for a man named Edgar Linton, a love that had bloomed in spite of their family's feud, a love that had defied the boundaries of wealth and class. But their happiness was short-lived. Catherine fell ill, consumed by a wasting sickness that mirrored the decay of the house itself. In her final days, she wrote of dreams, dreams that hinted at the darkness that lingered just beyond the veil, dreams that whispered of a hunger that could never be satiated. The last entry was dated October 1888. Catherine's words, scrawled in a shaky hand, told of Edgar's passing, of a grief so profound it threatened to swallow her whole. And then, abruptly, the entries stopped. With a sinking heart, Elias closed the diary, its worn leather growing cold beneath his touch. He felt a sudden urge to leave, to escape the suffocating embrace of the past. But the house had other plans. The wind outside grew into a tempest, slamming rain against the windows, shaking the very foundations of the old mansion. Elias found himself trapped, the darkness pressing in, the shadows reaching out. He fled to the library, a cavernous room with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, seeking refuge among the silent wisdom of ages past. Lightning flashed, momentarily banishing the gloom, revealing rows upon rows of leather-bound volumes, their spines whispering forgotten lore. Then he saw it, a grimoire, its cover bound in human skin, its pages filled with arcane symbols and incantations. Curiosity, that treacherous companion, drew him in. He knew he should flee, that common sense urged him to abandon this cursed house. But he couldn't resist the lure of the unknown, and so he opened the grip. In the heart of Blackwood Manor, amidst the cobwebs and the gathering dust, lay a hidden diary. Its pages, brittle with age, whispered tales of a family's descent into madness and the dark secret that haunted their bloodline. For generations, the Blackwood Diary chronicled the family's unraveling, each entry a grim reminder of the curse that had taken root within their walls. But our story doesn't begin with the diary. It begins much like this. The walls were lined with portraits' faces of people long dead, their eyes painted so vividly they seemed to follow every movement. The glass protecting them was cracked, and in the fractures their expressions seemed to shift, smiling one moment, scowling the next. Deeper inside, the rooms told their own stories. A dining hall where plates still rested on the table, their surfaces caked with dust, yet untouched us, though waiting for a meal that never came. A bedroom where the curtains rotted to threads, swaying gently in the stale air, though no window stood open. A library, its shelves sagging with books swollen from moisture, their words smeared into illegible scars. And then there was the staircase, a grand spiral sweeping upward into darkness, its steps worn by countless feet. But some steps were broken, splintered, as if someone had fallen or been dragged. It was not silence that haunted the mansion. It was the sounds that slipped between the silences. The faint tap of something above, like footsteps pacing. The flutter of fabric when no wind blew. De-whisper, soft and indistinct, that rose from the walls when the listener was alone. The villagers claimed that the house was cursed, that it had swallowed its first family whole, and each who entered afterward only added to its hunger. But legends are easy to dismiss, especially for those who believe fear is just superstition. And so, when the figure arrived, Dour Story's first intruder, they did not see a monster waiting. They saw only a house that seemed eager to let them in. The figure who entered the house, let's call them Elias said, heard the stories since childhood. Every villager spoke of the mansion with the same tone of hushed fear, but Elias carried a streak of stubborn disbelief. They were no stranger to fear, but they refused to bow to it. To them, The house was not cursed, was simply forgotten. And forgotten things, Elias believed, held secrets worth uncovering. At first, the air inside was merely stale, thick with the dust of years. Elias's lantern threw a dim glow across the hall, shadows stretching unnaturally long, as though reluctant to stay within the light. The house seemed asleep, but the longer Elias walked, the less silent it became. It began with faint sounds, the drip of water echoing from somewhere unseen, though the air was bone-dry. Then a hollow thump, like something heavy striking the floor above. Elias paused, listening. Silence. They shook their head. Old houses made noises. That was all. Yet the noises continued. A creak on the staircase, though no one stood upon it. A sigh that drifted through the hall, though the air was still. The sound of fabric brushing against wood, as though someone had just passed by. Elias felt the first prickle of unease, but pressed on. Curiosity was a stronger master than caution. In the library, the air grew colder. Their lantern flame flickered, though no draught touched it. One of the books, swollen and cracked, slid an inch from its shelf with a dry scrape. Elias froze. Dust settled slowly in the air around it, disturbed by no visible hand. When they turned, they swore a figure moved at the edge of their Vishuna shadow that did not belong to their body, slipping behind a shelf. Heart pounding, Elias forced themselves forward, whispering, "It's just the light, just the shadows." But shadows do not whisper back. A faint voice, low and fragmented, brushed against their ear. Words too broken to understand. Elias spun around, lantern raised, but the room was empty. Only the books remained, their spines cracked open like mouths mid-scream. By the time Elias reached the dining hall, the unease had grown unbearable. The long table, set as though for a feast, was coated in dust, thick as ash. But the silverware forks and knives, tarnished black, were not scattered by time. They were arranged perfectly, neatly, too neat. He could feel it. Something in the room shifted. A floorboard creaked under an unseen weight. Then a voice, raspy and ancient, echoed around him. "Who goes there?" Elias swallowed, his throat dry. He had to get out. He spun round, blindly flailing, seeking the door in the suffocating dark. A cold wind suddenly swept through the room, extinguishing the lanterns and sending shivers down his spine. He screamed. The voice laughed, a chilling cackle that reverberated through the house. Looking for this, it rasped, amusement dripping from its tone. Something brushed against his leg, icy cold, like a skeletal finger. Elias stumbled back, tripping over something soft and yielding. He cried out, scrambling away from it. He didn't want to know what it was. He just wanted to escape the suffocating darkness. Then a flicker of light appeared before him, growing brighter, revealing the source. A single candle flame dancing atop a table. And beside it, perched upon a chair, sat a woman. Her form was shrouded in shadow, but her voice cut through the gloom. "Who are you?" she asked. Her tone was gentle, a stark contrast to the maniacal laughter that still echoed in his ears. Elias hesitated, torn between fear and morbid curiosity. Who was this woman? What was she doing in this abandoned house? Why did she seem so calm amidst the chaos? The woman gestured to the chair beside her, her voice still soft. "Come, sit. We can talk." He needed to get out of there, flee while he still had the chance. But something held him back. Perhaps it was the flicker of warmth in the candle flame, or the momentary respite from the oppressive darkness. He lowered himself onto the chair cautiously, his eyes never leaving the woman. She remained still, watching him with an unreadable expression. The silence stretched, punctuated only by the rhythmic creaking of the old house. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely a whisper. "Do you remember me, Elias?" The name hung between them, a tangible thing. How did she know his name? Hadn't he been careful to conceal his identity? Fear pricked at him. This house, these people, they all seemed to know him, to know things about him. He shook his head, hoping to dispel whatever presence this woman seemed to think they shared. "I don't understand," he said, keeping his voice steady despite the tremor in his chest. The woman sighed, a wisp of sound that seemed to carry centuries of sorrow. "You knew me once," she murmured, more to herself than to him, but that was a lifetime ago. The candle flames sputtered, casting grotesque shadows on the walls. "A lifetime," she repeated, her gaze fixed on the flickering light. "This house remembers lifetimes," she whispered, as if sharing a secret with the very walls. Then, as if realizing the folly of her confession, she abruptly stood, her chair scraping harshly on the floor. "You must leave," she said, her voice sharp, commanding. "This place, it's not safe. You're not safe here." Relief flooded Elias, tinged with confusion. Why was he in danger? What did this house want from him? He nodded, scrambling to his feet and rushing towards the door. He had to get away, to put as much distance between himself and this house as possible. As he fumbled with the doorknob, he heard the woman call out, "Be careful, Elias. Some doors, once opened, are never meant to be closed again." Her words echoed behind him as he finally burst out into the night, leaving the house and its secrets behind. Or so he thought. For as he stumbled away, he could feel the house's gaze boring into his back. A silent, unseen watcher. And he knew, with a chilling certainty, that wherever he went, it would go. Ah, I love a good haunted house story, and this one's no exception. There's something about a creeping dread that just gets me every time. So let us see if you can spot the similarities between this story and another famous haunted house tale. The cradle creaked once more. The unseen figure rose higher, its movements jerky, unnatural, like a puppet tugged by frayed strings. And then Nit exhaled. The sound was damp, rattling, as though lungs had not drawn air in centuries. You know that feeling when you're re-watching a horror movie and the monster is slowly coming out from the shadows, when the suspense is so thick you can almost taste it. Yeah, me too. That's what this story does so well. Elias staggered backward until his spine struck the wall. He fumbled with his lantern, desperate to spark life back into the flame. But before the flint struck, a pale glow bloomed in the room. not from his lantern from eyes, dozens of them. The walls were alive with faces ghostly pale, their features warped, mouths open in silent screams. Their eyes glowed faintly, watching him. So we've got haunted house, check. Creepy doll, or in this case, creature, check. Unreliable narrator who's starting to lose their mind, check. And then there's the imagery. The story uses it to build this suffocating atmosphere. Trapped souls pressed into the wood and stone, their bodies lost, but their agony eternal. And from the cradle, the creature finally stepped into view. It was child-sized, but its skin clung tight to bone, gray and wet as though drowned long ago. Its head tilted with a crack, empty sockets where eyes should be oozing black tears. Even the description of the creature is terrifying. We get a sense of its physical form, but it's the details that stick with you. The gray and wet skin, the head tilted at an unnatural angle, the eyes that should be there but aren't. It's like the story is reaching into your brain and pulling out all those primal fears. In its skeletal hands, it clutched a single object, a rusted key. The voices returned, layered and overlapping, filling Ilias's skull. Stay, stay. Now we're getting somewhere. Okay, so we have the haunted house, the creepy creature, the unreliable narrator, and now we have the voices. Can you think of any other famous haunted house stories with these same elements? Pause the video here if you want to make a guess. The house did not want him gone. The house wanted him kept. Ilias's instinct screamed to run, but the corridors had already betrayed him once, twisting into endless mazes. Escape was an illusion. The only path was forward toward the thing before him. This is where the story really pulls you in. It's like the author is taking your hand, leading you deeper and deeper into this nightmare. Summoning courage born not of bravery, but of desperation, Ilias whispered, "What are you?" The creature's head snapped toward him, its sockets fixed on his face, its jaw unhinged wider than bone should allow, and from within, a swarm of shadows poured forth shapes of hands, limbs, broken faces screaming soundlessly. They rushed across the nursery, flooding toward him like a tide. Elias struck his lantern flint in panic. Sparks leaped. A flame burst. The shadows recoiled with an ear-splitting shriek, retreating to the corners like rats from fire. For a moment, the light saved him, but the creature remained, and now it moved closer. This is the climax, the moment of truth, and the story doesn't disappoint. The build-up is masterful. As the creature approaches, the pace quickens. The sentences become shorter, mirroring Elias's mounting panic. The final paragraph is pure terror. The creature is closing in, the key scraping against the floor, unlocking something inside Elias, while the trapped souls in the walls are reaching out, trying to pull him down. Step by step, its feet dragged against the floor. The key in its hand scraped as it trailed along the wood. With each scrape, Elias felt something inside himself weaken us. If the house were unlocking him from within, the whispers grew louder. Not just stay anymore, but fragments of sentences. Join us, feed the walls, be ours. Now I want to hear from you. What do you think happens next? What would you do if you were in Ilias's shoes? And most importantly, have you read or seen The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson? Because that's exactly what I'm thinking of when I read this story. In the village of Hollow Creek, nestled amidst rolling hills and whispering willows, stood an ancient mansion. Its grandeur was faded, its silhouette stark against the bruised twilight sky. The mansion had been abandoned for as long as anyone could remember, or at least that's what everyone told themselves. For those who lived there knew better. They knew that within those cold, crumbling walls, something stirred, something dark and hungry. It began subtly, a floorboard creaking in the dead of night, a whisper in the wind, the rustle of unseen things moving just beyond the periphery of sight. But as the weeks passed, the disturbances grew more pronounced. Doors slammed, windows rattled, and spectral figures flickered in the periphery, vanishing as quickly as they appeared. Then there were the nightmares. Elias, a young woodcarver known for his intricate and lifelike figures, began having nightmares. In his dreams, he explored the mansion's echoing halls, always pursued by faceless figures that seemed to melt into the walls. Each morning he awoke with a start, his heart thundering in his chest, the dream clinging to him like a shroud. One day, driven by an insatiable curiosity, or perhaps a morbid fascination, Elias decided to explore the mansion. Armed with a lantern and a stout walking stick, he pushed open the wrought iron gates. They groaned as if in protest, and stepped onto the overgrown path. As he approached the front door, he noticed a keyhole, one that seemed to have been added to the ancient wood in more recent times. In his pocket, Elias found an old rusted key that fit perfectly. He pushed the door open, and a musty wind rushed out, carrying with it the scent of decay and dust. Inside, the air grew colder. The faces in the wood writhed, pressing outward, their mouths gaping wide as if ready to swallow him. Elias clutched the lantern tighter. Its flame trembled. Then he saw it. In the flickering light, the faces twisted into grotesque grins, revealing rows of sharp, glistening teeth. He realized then the house did not need to kill. It consumed, piece by piece, soul by soul. Every intruder who stepped inside became part of its endless hunger, and now it wanted him. One of the faces detached itself from the others, coiling and uncoiling like a living snake. It slithered toward him, and Elias stumbled back, knocking over his lantern. It rolled across the floor, its flame extinguished, leaving him in total darkness. A low growl echoed through the house, and the creature advanced, its claws scraping against the stone floor. The walls seemed to pulsate, and Elias could feel the creature's hot, fetid breath on his neck. It raised the key, reaching toward his chest, and in that instant, Elias understood. The key was not meant for doors. It was meant for him, to open him, to hollow him, to lock his soul inside these walls forever. He screamed, but the sound caught in his throat, a strangled cry that died in the suffocating darkness. The last thing Elias saw was the glint of triumph in the creature's eyes before everything went black. By morning, the mansion looked the same, silent, abandoned, forgotten. The sun, a pale ghost behind a veil of clouds, cast long, skeletal shadows through the broken windows. But if one dared to approach, to peer through the cracked windows, they might notice something different. A new portrait now hung in the hall. The paint was fresh, the face unmistakable. Elias, eyes wide, mouth open in a frozen cry. His gaze followed intruders the same way the others did, pleading, warning, but powerless. The villagers never spoke of him again. Some said he left the valley, others said he vanished in the woods. But the house knew the truth. The house had claimed him, as it had claimed so many before, and in its endless hunger, it waited. They say if you listen closely on a windless night, you can still hear Elias's voice, trapped within the walls, whispering the same word over and over: run. But of course, curiosity always wins. Curiosity opens the doors. Curiosity steps inside. And once you enter, the house never lets you go. So tell me, if you found yourself standing before that mansion, rusted gate creaking open, shadows watching from the windows, would you walk away, or would you step inside?